Hi all, just wanted to show you one of the Growatt AC coupled battery storage solutions. This particular unit, it can go alongside an existing PV system and it'll work in tandem with that particular system itself. So the client here has got a Solis 3600 inverter. This particular system itself, it's just been strapped in parallel with it at the AC. So what happens is we have one CT clamp that goes around the main supply, an additional CT clamp that monitors solar production, which is obviously here. What happens is when your PV is generating, say for instance at the moment, the client's PV is generating 3.5 kilowatts. What it will do, obviously your batteries are turned off at the moment, but this particular unit monitors solar production, grid consumption, and then what it'll do, it'll put the difference into or pull the difference out of the batteries dependent on usage. The beauty of this particular product is what it'll do, in essence, through the daytime, it'll ultimately work in parallel with the existing system, so it'll give you a higher discharge rate. So if your PV system's kicking out 3 kilowatts but the property's drawing 5, this inverter will step in and make the difference in that demand. So it'll pull up to 3.5 kilowatts in and out of the battery dependent on the property's usage. On an evening, this takes over. Because your PV shuts down from conventional DC voltage, this unit will step in and make that difference in demand. So the property at the moment is basically, it's sending 1840 watts or variable back to the grid. If we turn the DC isolator off for the top inverter, shuts off the existing PV system. So you can see there, it's got an alarm, no grid. So this now shows you the fact that the property is using power because it's a PM or plus 530 watts. So you can see here, if you look closely, an arrow coming from the grid to the ohms usage. If we activate the batteries now, so all your batteries work in parallel, so it's a parallel connection and a series BMS, and that way it'll allow a higher discharge rate with more batteries. What happens is it runs through a sequence of tests. When it's okay, it's checking battery voltage. Providing everything's okay, it'll start up the system and the batteries will then discharge to meet the home's requirements. Depends on what the PV is doing and what the property is consuming, depends on which way the energy flows into or out of the unit itself. But from a functional point of view, they are a really good system, and the advantage to this particular type of system as well, you can force charge on the cheap rate energy to discharge through the day. And one of the cool features about this particular unit as well that no other unit can do, it's got a discharge prohibition setting on there. So if you've got an EV car, for instance, it pulls 100 kilowatts worth of power over a 7 kilowatt charge. There's no point depleting the home's batteries to meet the car's requirements. So just program a setting to stop the battery from degrading, or stop this inverter from pulling power from the batteries between the time frame that the EV car's on charge. And doing that, it just makes things work a lot more efficient, and it keeps the batteries at full capacity to meet the home's requirement, basically. So what you can see here now, your batteries have activated, power out, you've got 554 watts. So you're pulling 600 watts from the battery to meet the home's requirement, so the grid's not being used, basically. The beauty of it as well, as soon as the batteries are empty, it will just automatically revert back over to grid usage should you need to do so. But the good thing is about these as well, they are modular, so you can stack them up to 8 batteries, and they're perfect for any loft or garage mount, really, from an installation perspective. But with this particular unit, one other thing as well, you can use it for wind generation. So if you've got a wind generator, for instance, that's not compatible with a hybrid storage solution, we can strap this in and have it for multiple generating sets. So if you've got 3 separate inverters, as long as we can get the CT clamp at the origin itself and a CT to monitor the actual overall net generation dependent on where the inverters are connected into, this will pick up on the overall collective external production from any particular inverter itself. So what we'll do now, one last thing, activate the PV system. So as you can see, the property itself is taking energy from the battery at the moment. When your PV system becomes active in 30 seconds or so, because you're going to be generating more on the roof at the moment than what the actual property is needing as a demand, because we're only needing 500 watts, for instance, when that inverter activates and it's producing more than 500 watts, the difference will automatically go back into the battery to meet that, to stop you wasting and sending the surplus energy onto the network itself. So we'll have a quick look now at the Solace. Waiting to start up. And I'll show you exactly what it does on the screen. So there you go, 2.9 kilowatts. So what's happening is your power management will try to be kept at 0, because your power management is your difference in load balance between all three, from grid supply, from battery and from inverter. So you can see there you've got an arrow pointing towards the battery, meaning the battery's charging up. So your power management is near enough 0. Your power external, which is your external generating, 3.5. Your personal load is what the property is using, and then the you'll be able to see now you're putting 2780 watts into the battery. With these particular units as well, they do have an EPS function, so you can literally just connect an extension lead on that. So in the event of grid failure, you have got a direct point of electricity to draw from the batteries, up to around about 3.5 kilowatts in the event of grid outage. But just wanted to give you a brief overview really of how the systems operate, what they do and how well they function. So if you've got any more questions or queries, give us a call. Cheers.